All right, today we're going to talk about evolution. But I'm guessing it's not the one you're thinking of. This is a story that doesn't just span thousands of years. We're talking billions. And it's not about how our bodies changed, but about the incredible, epic journey of the soul itself, all based on the book Evolution in Two Worlds. So, where do you even start with a story this big? Well, the book points us to a quote from Allan Kardec, and it's all about a key to countless problems hitherto unsolved. And that key, he says, is something called the peri-spirit. The idea here is that this single concept is what unlocks a whole hidden dimension of our existence. And that really gets us to the core question, doesn't it? What if the whole story of life on this planet, from the first little microbe all the way up to us, was only half the picture? What if evolution wasn't just a physical process, but a deeply spiritual one? Okay, so let's dig into the cosmic blueprint. Because to really get a handle on this spiritual evolution, we first have to understand the universe it's happening in. We need to know the fundamental rules, the building blocks of reality, as the book lays them out. It all kicks off with something the text calls the cosmic fluid. The best way to picture it is as a kind of divine plasma. It's the raw, primordial energy of everything. It's described as the actual breath of the creator, the base material that everything, from a distant galaxy to our own thoughts, is ultimately made of. And that brings us back to that mysterious perispirit, or the spiritual body. Now, this is a really crucial idea in this worldview, so you gotta flip your thinking. It's not some ghostly copy of our physical body. It's the exact opposite. The spiritual body is the original electromagnetic blueprint, and our physical body is just the temporary copy that's built from it. So how does all this raw energy become, well, stuff? The book describes this kind of top-down process, a hierarchy of creation. It all starts with the creator, the absolute source. From there, that divine plasma flows out. Then, what the book calls divine intelligences, think of them as cosmic architects. They take this energy and shape it. They mold it into the substance of our universe, the galaxies, the suns, and the worlds we see. Okay, so the cosmic stage is set. Now we can zoom in, way in. From the scale of the entire cosmos, we're focusing down on primordial Earth to watch life's very first spark and the beginning of the soul's long, long journey. The book paints such a cool picture here. It describes the early Earth covered in these warm seas filled with a gigantic, viscous mass. You can almost see this cosmic jelly. And from that, the hero of our story finally appears, the intelligent principle. It's not a thing, not an animal. It's just the most basic, fundamental spark of consciousness, taking its very first steps. And when I say it's a long journey, I am not kidding. The text puts a number on it. It took 1.5 billion years for that tiny, intelligent principle to make its way through all the lower kingdoms of nature, just to get to the starting line of what we would recognize as human reason. That's an almost impossible amount of time to wrap your head around. So, the next big phase of this journey is basically a super long apprenticeship. This is the period where that simple spark of intelligence starts to build its toolkit, forging the fundamental abilities it's going to need for the rest of its journey: sensation and instinct. And you can literally trace this climb up the ladder of life. It starts out in that protoplasmic goo, then it moves into life forms like algae, where it learns what sensation even is. It keeps climbing through arthropods and early mammals, and all the while its spiritual body is acting as the mold for more and more complex physical bodies, adding in nervous systems, higher instincts, basic psychological reactions, until it finally gets to the early hominids, and boom, the lights of reason start to flicker on. And this is the pivot point, the Great Divide. See, the entire journey up to this moment was all about building automatic behaviors. Moving from a simple reflex to a complex instinct. It was all a kind of unconscious programming. But now, the whole game changes. We're leaving all that behind and entering the world of intelligence, reason, real choice, and conscious will. This brings us to the Great Leap itself, the transition into the human kingdom. And the focus here shifts completely. It's no longer about building a better vehicle for survival. It's about building a sophisticated new vehicle specifically for the mind. So what comes in this new upgrade package? Well, of course, you get an evolving brain and sharper senses. But the real game changers are things like articulated speech, the ability to communicate complex ideas.
That then allows for continuous thought, which opens up a door that has been shut for a billion years, the dawn of moral inquiry, and right on its heels, the birth of personal responsibility.
And this final step, honestly, might be the most important part of the entire story. It's not just about becoming smarter or more powerful, it's about the moral awakening of the soul.
You can see it laid out like a chain reaction, right? First comes the articulated word. That makes continuous thought possible. You can reflect, you can remember, you can plan. Once you can do that, you inevitably start asking moral questions. Not just what can I do, but what should I do? And that very question marks the birth of personal responsibility. The soul is finally in the driver's seat, making its own choices.
So, how do you possibly sum up a journey that spans 1.5 billion years? Well, the book lands on a really powerful and elegant analogy, the metamorphosis of a butterfly. And the parallel here is just perfect. Think about it. The larva, the caterpillar, just crawling around, totally driven by instinct. That's the soul's long apprenticeship in the animal kingdom. Then there's the pupa, the chrysalis, this stage of trial, of intense, messy, internal transformation. That's the human experience. That's us. And finally, you get the imago, the butterfly, emerging free, able to fly. That symbolizes the soul's ultimate destiny as a fully conscious spiritual being, ready for a whole new reality. Which, of course, leaves us with one last really provocative question to think about. If this epic story is our story, then what stage are we in right now? Are we still in that transformative, messy, trial-filled stage of the pupa? And if we are, what does that mean for how we should be living? And what exactly are we preparing to become?